This pretty is now the first, the next up, the next. That was really good. Hi guys, welcome back. Today we are talking about university applications, specifically my experience applying to both the UK and the US. And to do that, I'm going to have some help from US Tenny and UK Tenny. Oh hi. You brought notes? You didn't? No, I have notes. Okay, anyway, so we'll be discussing the similarities and differences, the pros and cons of both. I mean, yeah, the UCAS essay doesn't even ask you anything about your interests. It's all, how many books have you read and how many hours of work experience have you done? But excuse us for wanting to know about the applicant's academic life. Okay, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Both systems are good in their own way, and really, there is no best system. The one that's best for you depends on, your goals and your situation. And also, I'm talking about my experience, which is specific to me doing the IB, applying to specific schools in the UK and the US, and applying for architecture. So for example, not every school in the US accepts applications with the common application, and in the UK, I'm not sure about the US, certain subjects like medicine or law require extra exams. So for example, law, you have the LNAT. So essentially this video is pretty niche, and my hope is just that it will help anybody who is trying to decide specifically between the UK and the US, or who just wants to learn more about either system. Okay, so let's go chronologically. Now, the first thing is probably to decide between the UK and the US. These are the vibes that I personally get. Lots of disclaimers. This is not official in any way. This is just my opinion, which is one of many. So I'm just sharing with you guys what I think. I feel like the UK is probably better for somebody who has a pretty solid idea of what they want to do. They're like pretty certain that they want to study the subject and they're ready to just go for it. This can be seen in the personal statement, which is essentially you talking about why you love the subject, and also in the interview, which is very subject based. So they have a pretty solid idea of what they want to do and why. That being said, I was definitely not this person. And the US, in my opinion, is probably better for somebody that wants to explore a bit more, that isn't necessarily sure what exactly they want to do and they just want to try lots of different things. A lot of the unis are liberal arts based, and so you have to take subjects in different departments regardless of your major. At Yale, for example, you can't officially declare a major until I think your second year, and so you have to explore. And so in the US system, the essays and supplementary essays are more about you as a person, and the interview is the same way. My interview had no subject specific questions, and I think the word architecture came up like twice in total. And obviously this is only a very brief description of the differences, so some courses of study may be longer in the US than they are in the UK, or vice versa. Certain qualifications might only be available in one place or the other. You have to do your own research with your own specific situation and goals in mind. And this really goes for deciding between any educational systems. You just do your own research and look into the similarities and differences in the system, and then you can decide which system will work better for you. So for example, I knew I could get a really good education regardless of whether I went to the UK or the US. The UK offered me depth and the US offered breadth, and I went for breadth. And of course, there will be external factors taken into consideration. For example, I would have loved to go to school in Australia. My dad was like, that's way too far, like it was not even an option. And so obviously you need to keep your own situation in mind. That might be financially, just in terms of the logistics. So just also different things that you need to keep in mind when you're looking. Okay, so now let's say you've decided on the system you want, or at least you have a first choice. The next step is to research. And now I was looking at universities during COVID, and obviously traveling anywhere was not an option. And so that's where YouTube came in. So campus tours, Q&As, videos like this, I would watch all of them, like all the time. I was just watching YouTube videos about universities. And my school, my counsellor gave us a list of around 200 pretty good schools in the US, and I went through quite a lot of them. I would sometimes just watch a 2-3 minute campus tour and be like, okay, no thank you. If I liked it, I would go more into depth. I would look at do they have the course I want to do, where is the location like, stuff like that. So I went really into depth. I even had a spreadsheet with all the different schools, and I listed their pros and cons. So my first choice was the US system, and as the first daughter in a Nigerian family, I wanted to go to an Ivy. And you know, obviously there are lots of different good schools, like that was just for me and my situation. And I'll be honest with you, I thought they were all the same, Harvard, Yale, like what's the difference? But then I really did my research in them and I was like, whoa, there are actually quite a few differences. And so after doing my research, Yale came out on top for me. We will get to the importance of picking a school that you genuinely mesh with later on. For the UK, architecture really narrowed down my options, so I just looked at some of the top architecture schools and they were already pretty varied, like they weren't all expecting me to get 45 in the IB, and so that really helped me. But if the UK had been my top choice, I would have done what I did with the US, which is look very in depth into all the schools, watch all the campus tours, all the Q&As, and I mean if you're watching this video, you're already off to a pretty good start. So by now you probably have a pretty good list of schools, and I guess now is a good time to talk about dates and deadlines and also sorts of the parameters for applying, so like limits and stuff like that. For example, in the UK through UCAS you have to apply to 5 schools, and if you're doing Oxbridge the deadline is a bit earlier, so just look out for that. If you're applying in the US, you can apply to as many schools as you like, but you will likely have a top choice and you'll likely want to apply early. Now there are 3 ways this can happen. The first is early decision, and this essentially means that if you get in you have to go, and so you can't apply to any of the schools early. The second is early action. If you get in, you're not legally bound to go, and so you can apply to many schools early action. And the third is restrictive early action, and this is a bit special. This is what Yale does, which is essentially if you get in, you're not legally bound to go. However, the other schools that you can apply to early are restricted. So for example, I don't think you can apply to Yale and Princeton early, but you can apply to Yale on like a different school that they let you apply early to early. Yeah, but you could apply to Princeton in the regular decision round. So just be really careful about whether the school you're applying to does ED, EA or REA, and if it's restrictive early action, they will tell you the schools you cannot apply to, and if it's early decision, just make sure you're sure. Alright, application time. Both systems have what I like to think of as the big essay. So I don't think the UCAS essay for the UK system has a prompt, but if it does, that just goes to show you that's not important. But I like to think of it as, why do you want to study architecture? So why do you want to study in that subject? To help answer this, you'll likely need to talk about the books you've read regarding the subject, any courses you've done, any work experience you've done, and these are all collectively called supercurriculars. Now, I personally have a problem with the UK system because I think it's a bit I think it's very unrealistic to expect a 17-year-old to firstly know what they want to do for the rest of their life, and then also already be studying it while they're doing A-levels or IB or whatever they're doing. So now I'm giving you guys all this advice as somebody that firstly was not even sure that they wanted to do architecture, and secondly in protest only started reading architecture books like the summer/term of applications. Okay, so now for some concrete information. There is no 2 ways about doing research into your subject, and I think while it may be annoying and also actually quite difficult while you're studying for exams or doing coursework or whatever, it is genuinely helpful because it helps you see like, okay, do I even want to study this subject? Like, am I even interested in it at all? And so for me, it kind of confirmed that architecture is something I'd potentially be interested in, you know, doing a long time, and it also highlighted which areas of architecture specifically that I even was interested in. So now, honestly, I didn't really have that much time. I was very busy, and compared to some of my friends, I don't really think I did that much, but I do think I was pretty efficient about it. So I'm hoping that as I tell you guys kind of what I did, it will help you not worry about it as much, because I was definitely like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing enough, I don't have enough work experience and all that. So hopefully this should like ease your mind a bit. I can make a specific video about architecture and the Cambridge process and interview, but for my UCAS essay, essentially, I read 2 books. I read The Classical Language of Architecture and I read The Architecture of Happiness. And these weren't really random. I already knew that I was interested in the link between emotion and architecture, and so The Architecture of Happiness just made sense. And then sort of like combat that and give me some more like concrete knowledge, I guess, I read The Classical Language of Architecture. And I'm pretty sure that the interview is tailored to the books that you said you've read or things you said you've done. So actually read them, don't just write them in there. Please read the books. Now, I had 1 instance of work experience in year 9 and it was 3 days. So it was not a lot, and I panicked about it. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing enough. But it was fine. So, and then over the summer I did a course on sustainability in architecture by the University of Bath. It was just 7 days online, just like modules, so it wasn't super intense as well. I'm also interested in sustainable architecture, so I was able to link the things I learned in that course and also the things I read in the book together. And I think that's important. So regardless of which books you read and whatever you do, that you will always find ways that you can link them together, and those ways will be specific to you. So even though I felt like, oh, it's such an academic thing, it's like so specific to the subject, you still find ways to show them your personality and your interest through that. So yes, as you can see, it is very academic. The UK universities want to know about you as a student. Now, the Common App essay is different. That is definitely more about you as a person than just about you as an academic. And there are different prompts, but the last prompt is you basically write whatever you like, and that's the prompt I chose. Okay, so a few points about this. So a lot of people write about big, life-changing experiences, and I didn't really have any of this to write about, which really worried me because I was like, well, I don't have anything to say. But honestly, guys, there is always something to write. Because essentially, you're telling the admissions officers who you are. And for some people, moving halfway across the world, for example, is part of who they are. For others, it's connected to learning to cook. For others still, it's connected to doing a particular tricky expedition or playing a sport. None of them is necessarily better than the other. And it's not about the activity or the thing, it's about how it shaped and affected you as a person. In fact, an essay about learning to cook might be better than an essay about sailing if it is more honest and it tells us more about you. Essentially, I believe that if you want your essay to be good, there are really no two ways about being honest and about being a bit vulnerable. It's a very tricky dance of not downplaying your strengths but also not bragging, and on the other hand, being honest about your faults but not being like too real, you know. I think it really is tricky, but it is the way to go because you don't want your essay to come across as shallow or inauthentic, as it's your chance to really talk directly to the admissions officer and tell them about you and tell them who you are and why you should go to their school. Now, this is where your research really comes in handy because each school pretty much values a different combination of the same things. But one school, for example, could really value community, and another school could really value courage. Now, there are definitely people that tailor their application to kind of school they want to go to. So if they want to go to somewhere that values courage, they tailor the application to that, and that's fine. But I honestly think you're better off finding a school whose values really align with you, because that way you are more likely to be genuinely happy at the school, and the admission officer are also more likely to see your authenticity through your essay. I don't think there was anything particularly magical about my Common App essay. I think the admission officers just believed I was somebody who would have a positive impact at Yale and who would also be positively impacted by Yale. Long story short, don't overthink it. Just be honest with yourself and through your words. Now, another point is that nothing is original. Okay, nothing. So don't worry about trying to be groundbreaking or epic. Like, just, it's okay. Okay, it's probably nothing that the admissions officer hasn't already read before, so don't beat yourself up if you feel like it's not like super original or super unique. Let's even take climbing a mountain. Is it cool? Yeah. Is it the most unique thing in the world? Probably not. But my experience climbing Table Mountain might be very different to your experience hiking in Wales, and the things we learned from that and the kind of the lessons we took and how it shaped us is going to be different. So even if the idea itself is not original, how it pertains to you will be original, because you're original, like there's only one you. There is also the reality that your essay will not be perfect on the first draft. Now, I heard this and I was like, how hard can it be? Yeah, it was hard. Okay, I learned that. I learned through experience. Let's look through some of my first drafts, shall we? Please no. They're not even that bad. I'm just being dramatic. Now, my first one was about being the queen of birthdays, and the feedback I got was that it came across as breezy and excited, which was good, but they're also overly confident and not self-aware. And I'm neither of those things. I was like, okay, something is wrong with this essay, you need to work on it. And so I did, but then eventually I hit a block and I couldn't make the essay any more me. And so at that point, I realized that I needed to step away from the essay and try something different. After that, I wrote one about my family playing an adventure game. And in that one, it was clear that I valued my family, which is true, that I can be over competitive, which is also true, but also that I can learn from my mistakes. And so the point I'm trying to highlight here is that you don't need to try and be perfect. The admissions officer already knows that you're not, but you want to make sure that you're getting across you. So for example, being overconfident, that was not me. Being overcompetitive, that was. However, that essay didn't work out either because it was focusing too much on other people, my family, and it was also too negative. So you don't want to be too negative as well. I know I'm saying a lot of like, oh, you don't want to do this, to that. It's like a balance, but I believe in you guys. You can do it. After that, I wrote an essay about, what was it? It was about taking pictures, then I wrote another one about working out, but neither of those were the one. And then in the half-term break before the deadline, when it was like literally ticking closer, I sat down and I wrote an essay about what type of painting I would be. And the answer, if you're wondering, is a Fauvist Rococo Impressionist mashup. yeah, that was generally what my essay was about. And honestly, I'm not going to pretend I can't highlight exactly what I did differently or why this one worked, but I can pick out a few elements that I think made it better than the others. One was that I abandoned the idea that my essay had to be about something, overcoming a challenge, learning a new skill, something. I just wrote about who I am. The second thing is I asked myself, what did I want the admission officer to know about me? I wanted them to know that I'm creative and I'm very aware of the fact that my life has been shaped by people that surround me. I wanted them to know that I value community, which is something that Yale values as well, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to go to Yale in the first place. I wanted them to know that I believe the sky is the limit and that I used to be deathly afraid of failure. I wanted them to know that I'm working on that and I'm super excited for the future. And so I wrote with those things in mind. And so that's my advice to you. Maybe literally just write down the things that you want the admission officer to know about you after they finish reading it, and then write with those things in mind. And then I got feedback. And now this one is tricky because too many cooks spoil the broth, but the feedback I got on this one was that it sounds like me. And I think honestly, when writing a college essay, that's probably the highest praise you can ask for. My essay still wasn't a perfect essay, but it showed who I was, and that was the goal. So maybe it was perfect in that sense. That sounds so, arrogant. I don't mean it like that. You guys know what I mean. Ooh, and a bonus tip is just type. Set a 10-minute timer and just type when you're trying to write. If you ever run to a blog or whatever, and most likely what you type will not be good, but I think it just helps to get out of that mental space where the next thing I write has to be really good. Don't even let yourself dwell on the fact that it's not good. Just type for 10 minutes. It really does help. Thank you to my US advisor who gave me that tip. That was not from my own brain. Okay, so now this video is pretty long and I still have to talk about a lot of other things. Ooh, you could do a part 2 talking about supplementary essays and interviews and hearing back and making final decisions. You could do that. Or you could make a video dedicated to just Cambridge and talk about the interview assessment and the whole interview process. And then you could make one for just Yale and talk about supplementary essays and all the US specific stuff. Okay, so what do you guys think? Would you want a part 2 of UK versus US? Or would you want a dedicated UK Cambridge video and a dedicated US Yale video? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe. You are so embarrassing. But yeah, we love you guys. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you guys next week. Bada bing, bada boom. Get it. That was really good. I'm really happy with that. Let's go. That is it. Done. We are done with the video. I'm actually really excited to see how this comes together. Right now, it doesn't look good. But I'm hoping that from far away it looks good enough. And if not, oh man, maybe I should have I should have done that. No, it's okay. It's a bit too late anyway.